So the last 3 times I came here, I gave talks on the first 3 of the Noble Truths. And this will be the last in this series, a talk on the 4th Noble Truth. The 4th Noble Truth is kind of funny because it is the Eightfold Path. So it's like opening up a gift and then finding that it's actually 8 smaller gifts or larger. Size doesn't really apply here. So the 4th Noble Truth is actually a gateway to a whole new set of teachings. But I want to talk about what it represents without actually diving in to the Eightfold Path tonight. I'll touch on it, but I want to talk about why that would be, right? That the existence of the Eightfold Path is in of itself the 4th Noble Truth. The existence of a way, a method, is something remarkable in its own right. And I also want to position sort of where we are right now here relative to the arc of Buddhist teachings over the long term. And talk about how we are deviating a little bit and making it relevant for the here and now. As I mentioned in the last few weeks, in the classic sense, this method is for stepping off the wheel of karma, being born and dying, samsara, sort of the sea of suffering. And that may be true. I can't tell you for sure either way. If you want to find out for yourself, get serious about meditating, and you can let me know. I also don't know if that's why anybody came here tonight. How many of you woke up this morning and said, I'm done with samsara, no more rebirths. I need to complete the spiritual life. That's what the monks would say whenever they would attain nibbana in the classic text. Basically, what needed to be done has been done. No more being born and dying. Did my work. But if that's not why you came here, I would understand. It's not why I came here. And even along those lines, there are also other things that can happen with this path. These deep states of concentration, intense vision, spiritual experiences related to being reborn, and the cycle of births and deaths. I've had some of those experiences too. Not all of them. But again, I don't think that's why we came here tonight. And again, if you want to explore that stuff, you can, and retreat formats are a really good place to do that. I came to Buddhism because I was acting in ways that were confusing and harmful to me and the people around me, and I was totally miserable. It was more mundane, right? It wasn't the beginning of a large spiritual quest. It's just like, this is hard. Help. And I imagine that at least some of you have something similar. Right? Maybe not the same constellation of misery that I was facing, but your own constellation of difficulty or confusion or pain. And I fell in love with Buddhism, not because somebody told me I was going to step off the wheel of samsara, but because my teachers taught me techniques to observe my mind, how to watch my own mind. That was a revelatory experience. How to steady my mind, also a revelatory experience. I did not know that the mind could get quiet. That was a pretty nifty thing. And how to untangle the knots in my heart. And in some ways, as cool as those first 2 things were, that was the piece that really got me hooked. oh, I can actually, I didn't even know there were knots in my heart. And then to discover that they were there and learn how to loosen them through gentle, loving attention and curiosity. That was really something. So that's why I'm here. It's what brought me in. It's what keeps me here. And I say all that just because I want to be really clear. If we're going to talk about the way, I'm going to be honest about where the way goes, right? Certainly as I'm going to teach it to you tonight and how I interpret it. The other thing that kept me coming back was that when you combine those three things, an ability to watch the mind, an ability to study the mind, an ability to untangle the knots in the heart, you can reach a very tender, quiet place. And the more I did this practice, the more ways I learned to get back to that place in a variety of different situations. And so I started to trust that I could find it again and again and again. And so here's the goal that I would offer as where the fourth noble truth can point us in our everyday lives. It can point us towards this experience of tender observation of our own minds and our own experience, what we would call mindfulness, steadying and quieting of the mind, what we would call samadhi, and how to untangle the heart so that it's fluid and responsive to life. We might classify within the realm of the Brahma Viharas, the divine abodes, the heart practices. And these three things are interrelated. They kind of weave together in the teachings. I'm not going to really address karma or rebirth or any of that stuff, but I don't think anything that we are talking about is counter to it. So if that's a goal, don't worry, you're probably still heading in the right direction. Bhikkhu Bodhi, a well-respected monk who translated a lot of the early Pali texts into English, said that if you leave aside the karma and the rebirth and stuff, this all falls apart. Actually, the whole Dharma is in tatters. And I just want to acknowledge that, right? That like there are some different schools of thought in our current society and within the sort of world of Buddhism about whether the thing works if you kind of migrate it away from ancient India and a practice of renunciates into a group of people in suburban Bethesda. But what I can tell you is that it's been really helpful. And that there's something about the way these teachings fit together and the way they resonate that makes me think that there is a through line and that there are actually some pieces of what was being taught in the ancient world that are very much what's drawing us here and what we're finding beneficial now. So that's all just a preamble, just to say, here's who I am in relation to this and here's what we're doing. And then you can decide whether you want to take it or leave it. So just recapping the last 3 weeks, the first noble truth, as I've come to understand it, right? The first noble truth in Pali is dukkha. It is the truth of dukkha. And I would define dukkha as the disconnection of the mind, the thoughts in the mind, from the quiet wisdom of the heart. And that second noble truth is the truth of dukkha, the cause of dukkha. And the way I would define the cause of dukkha, the cause of that disconnection, is that it occurs when the mind gets confused about how things work, about how this world works, about how our minds work. When it forgets, when it's enchanted by pleasure or terrorized by pain and fear, those things cause forgetting, and the mind gets separated from the heart. That's the cause of dukkha. We get confused, we get separated, we forget. The third noble truth, nirodha, is that there is a way back. There is an end to this. You can once again return to that quiet, loving space that exists no matter what is taking place in the material world. It's always there. I don't know if it's out here. I don't know if it's in here. I'm not going to offer any metaphysical analysis on it, but you can touch it. You can join the mind and heart in a way that you can feel it and be aware of it. And that's, to me, how I'm going to interpret the third noble truth. There is an end to that disconnection. And most of us know it. We know what it feels like to relax, and to wake up into uncertainty at the same time, and the wonderful quality of being both relaxed and awake. I'm here living this life, and there's a feeling of being at peace with it. And if we've experienced this, we also know that there's a quality of love and caring that comes with that. It's bound up in that. And the fourth noble truth is that there's a method. It's not the only method. There have been a lot of spiritual teachers who have their own fourth noble truth, their own way, their own path. And a lot of them work, and they work very well. But the Buddha offered a method. And it, to me, is a pretty good one. It's elegant. It's simple. It can be packaged into just a few words and then expanded into thousands and thousands and thousands of pages. There's something nice about these teachings that way. And it's really nice to know that there's a method. And I will say one of the things that Buddhism emphasizes is the technique, is the approach, is the recipe. It's not just love thy neighbor as you would love yourself, but it's also what can you do with the thoughts and the mind? How can you access the heart via the body to get to that point of loving your neighbor as you love yourself? There's an extra layer of instruction in this approach that I really appreciate. So what we are doing with this fourth noble truth is we are training the mind to rejoin the heart and to find its way back to that tender, still awareness. And this is the Eightfold Path. And the Eightfold Path is often categorized in 3 sections that make it a little easier to remember. And the first section is what we call the morality trainings. And they start with this basic idea that the things you do will have consequences. Right? This is a very modern and basic interpretation of karma. The stuff you do matters. It will shape your experience in relationship to life. Right? It has an impact that reverberates. And certain types of actions create more separation, and certain types of actions bring you back home to that quiet, tender place. And within those morality trainings in the Eightfold Path, you start by understanding that what you do matters. And then you systematically look at the things you say, the things you do, how you make money, and what intentions you carry out into the world. Right? So that's the morality trainings. Once you understand that what you do matters, then you kind of systematically, and it really awakens naturally, you want to clean things up a little bit. You want to start engaging in work that feels wholesome and helpful and healthy for you and the people around you. You want to try to be a little less salty with your family members on the phone, right? To be gentler to people. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It's not an instant process, but it's a new orientation. And often in this early phase of practice, things actually can start to change pretty quickly, right? People realize, like, I just can't keep working in this place, or I just can't keep engaging with this person in this way. Something has to change here. This hurts too much. I'm contributing in a way that's keeping me disconnected from myself. So even if you haven't completed that process, once there's a certain amount of energy channeled into it, once things start to feel more in alignment, then we transition to the second part of this Eightfold Path, which are considered the Sila Samadhi Panya. Sorry, the Pali came faster than the English. The mind trainings. So the trainings for mindfulness and samadhi. And we decide through right effort to intentionally take our energy, now that we're sort of connected to our heart, we have a little more energy in us because we're not fighting all these fires that we've lit in our lives. We're not going to work that's exhausting because it's at war with our values. We're not creating tons of chaos and drama in our lives. We have a little more energy. There's a little more peace. We say, where do I want to direct this energy that I've reclaimed? And we direct it to the intentional cultivation and training of the mind. Mindfulness, samadhi. Mindfulness is that tender awareness throughout the day. Oh, it's like this. Oh, this is what sadness is like. This is what anxiety is like. This is what shame is like. Really gently. Oh, shame. You again. Oh, anxiety. Oh, you again. Right? Oh, terror. Oh, you again. Right? Just that gentle all day. So we're putting effort into that continual practice of mindfulness. And then we also put effort into what we just did here, which is the samadhi training, the getting quiet. The invitation of the mind and body to really collect the energy so that the mindfulness is just watching the mind and there's not a lot else going on. The attention becomes less divided. And I don't know if any of you had the experience, but sometimes if you start the meditation practice like we did today, just saying, I'm just going to keep a little attention on the breath. Sometimes what happens is it grows a little bit. And actually there's a little more attention on the breath and a little more. And the mind gets a little bit more quiet. And that process of the mind just slowly, sort of like a top coming to a stop, spinning slower and slower, that's samadhi. Okay, so there's the morality trainings, the mind trainings, and then the wisdom. As you're watching the mind all day and taking breaks to develop samadhi either here or on retreats, you start to see stuff. You start to see just how this mind is wired. You start to see in granular detail all the places where it gets tripped up and confused and creates problems. You get curious about it. You start to find that you can actually notice things in the body and they give you a backdoor into your subconscious. And you're like, oh, that's pretty cool. And you learn how this whole system's configured and wired, or at least some of it. And then the really nice thing is that creates wisdom, which feeds right back into the beginning of the path. Because the more wisdom you have, the more you see the way in which even subtle intentions and actions create harm or create happiness. The desire to refine the way you live gets even stronger and more subtle and nuanced. And then there's more energy to direct into deeper practice. And this is the way as the Buddha taught it. And even if you don't believe in the old cosmological stuff, give it a try because it can be an incredibly powerful and elegant approach to spiritual life. Now, is it complete based on what we know about how the mind works now? No. There's no mention of trauma, right? And actually the mention there is probably wouldn't be considered like good trauma-informed advice. The Buddha basically said, like, stop thinking about the people who abused you, stop complaining about it, move on, right? You know, that's like was it Mike Myers in Saturday Night Live when he was a therapist and he would just yell at his clients, just stop it. You guys know that skit? just stop it. Right? So not the best advice, but there's actually room for it in the Buddhist teachings. A lot of what we understand about trauma actually in the healing of trauma, is built around deep human connection, around understanding and awareness of the body, and about combining the process of building alertness in the mind and relaxing. It's this weaving of awakening and relaxing. That's how most of the modalities for trauma healing that we use in Western psychotherapy work. And that process of weaving, awakening, and relaxing, bringing attention to something difficult and also grounding at the same time, this is inherent in the Buddhist teachings on the awakening factors. So actually, you can find some pretty cool parallels between the two. There's space to bring trauma into the Buddhist teachings. Another place that doesn't totally fit with our modern understanding of the mind and body is that there's a lot of writing in the early texts about the removal of lust and hatred. And I don't know about any of you, but I haven't met too many people who have effectively just stripped out entire elements of their personality or biology. Temporarily, sure, right? I've gone on retreat and gotten the mind quiet enough that I just don't desire very much. Things get quiet, right? Sort of sexual desires get quiet. Even my hunger gets pretty low. I just eat a little bit to sustain myself. But once I leave that contained setting, those things come back. And so I don't know if it's just the way the texts were translated over time, or if the Buddha was teaching something that either worked for him and doesn't work for the rest of us. I couldn't tell you. But the idea that we could eliminate desire or eliminate sort of resentment or aversion from us, that either feels like a misunderstanding of what was taught or something that we just need to update. What feels more appropriate and realistic based on my lived experience, the experience of students of mine, the experience of the clients I work with in my psychotherapy practice, is coming to understand those desires, those resentments, and to bring them into a healthy balance in our life. To learn where to place sexual desire in a way that feels healthy and constructive, right? And within the boundaries of our life, where to place our relationship with pleasure in a way that feels healthy and constructive. And bringing awareness to those things keeps us from being sort of blended and merged with them. So we can actually say, oh, here's a desire to do this. How do I want to engage with that? That feels like where the real freedom lies, right? That seems realistic to me in a way that I'm going to end all craving in the mind. Like that doesn't make sense to me. And I haven't seen anybody do it. If you have, please let me know. So what I teach is a relationship with desire, a relationship with aversion, being able to see them arise in the body, hold them in mindful awareness, and decide what to do with them. So this is my understanding and interpretation of the Fourth Noble Truth. It is a systematic invitation for how to live a whole life, right? It covers every moment of the day, from when you wake up to when you go to bed, not just here for 90 minutes, but how to live a whole life in a way that brings the mind and heart back together again, that ends dukkha, that creates more and more of these moments of living from a place of tender peace and stillness. And I'll stop there.